Up next, we have Larutu Saba, who'll be talking about magnetization process in epitaxial iron cobalt thin films via anisotropic magnetoresistance.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I mean, see your screen now.
So, hi everyone. My name is Lautaro Saba from Instituto Balseiro, Argentina. Today I will talk about magnetization process in epitaxial thin films. So this is the outline. Well, our iron cobalt films grown on single crystal MgO substrates. By heating the substrate during the growth of the iron cobalt film, we achieve layers with the 100 axis rotated by 45 degrees with respect to the MgO 100 substrate direction. And this is the average value of the saturation magnetization of the layer growth. Here I show curved staircases, loops with the external magnetic field applied along different crystallographic directions. And this experiment confirms that the sample presents a proof of symmetry with the presence of a relatively weak uniaxial anisotropy. This uniaxial anisotropy is due to the growth technique, and it doesn't have to do with the crystallographic structure. We will see the implication of the uniaxial anisotropy in the magnetization process. So the magnetization process of the iron cobalt film was studied considering a macroscopic single domain approximation as in the standard Wolfram model. Within this approach, we can consider that the magnetization rotates coherently. This is the expression proposed for the free energy. The first term corresponds to the Zeeman energy. The second term corresponds to the shape anisotropy. The third term to the cubic anisotropy, and the last term to the uniaxial anisotropy. By minimizing the free energy, we obtain the magnetization confining the plane. And this results in a simplified free energy expression containing only terms in phi sub m, this angle here. Experimentally, anisotropic magnetoresistance manifests as the dependence of electrical resistance on the relative angle between the direction of the applied current and the magnetization, this angle alpha. From the generalized Ohm's law, we get this equation, and where here J is the current density, M is the unit vector in the direction of magnetization, and rho parallel and rho perpendicular are the resistivities when the current is parallel and perpendicular to the magnetization. From this equation, we can get we can express the longitudinal transverse resistivities. Alpha, again, is the angle between the magnetization and the electric current. And the angles phi sub m and phi sub h are measured with respect to the 100 direction of the crystallographic direction of the iron cobalt crystallographic structure. So we also shown here a representation of the quadrants in which the transverse voltage takes positive or negative values. The transverse voltage is Pxy. And generally, AMR or anisotropic magnetoresistance is defined as this ratio. Two bars were used to the characterization, one oriented along the direction of the iron cobalt magnetization easy axis, 100, and the other bar oriented along the magnetization hard axis, 110. To determine the AMR ratio, the longitudinal and transverse voltages were measured by varying the field direction, phi sub h, while controlling the sample temperature and external magnetic field amplitude. In the figure, the current density was applied along, for example, 110 direction, the hard axis, and the applied field was 150 milliteslas, enough to saturate the sample, so phi sub m is equal to phi sub h. So to estimate the EMR ratio, the data were fitted using these expressions. Our measurements of the AMR ratio along 100 and 110 direction confirm that the AMR depends on the crystallographic directions in which the current is injected, and this anisotropy is important for potential applications, but I won't talk about it. So in this slide, I will show you the magnetization process. From the longitudinal and transverse voltages, we studied the magnetization process when applying the external magnetic field along differing in plane direction, phi sub h. The figure displays the normalized longitudinal voltage. So our cosine and sine cosine of alpha. The direction of the applying current here correspond to the 100 crystallographic direction. So for example, when the external field is applied along the 100 direction, 180 degrees, or on its equivalent direction, 0 degrees, the longitudinal resistance is almost constant, the blue line, and independent of the magnetic field value, since it corresponds to an easy axis. So the magnetization is stay in this axis. In contrast, when the external magnetic field is applied along a hard axis, 110 direction or 135 degrees, the longitudinal resistance increases as we decrease the magnetic field. This is because this is a hard axis, and for the range between 90 degrees and 135 degrees, a sharp minimum appears in the longitudinal resistance curve close to the coercive field value, and the transition between low and high resistance states becomes abrupt as we approach 90 degrees. The high resistance state observed at zero field corresponds to the reorientation of the magnetization from 010 to the direction 100. This is because of the presence of the uniaxial anisotropy parallel to the direction 100. In the next figure, the normalized transverse voltage is also plotted as a function of the same variables. So when the external magnetic field is applied along 010, for example, the transverse signal remains nearly constant for both positive and negative value of the external magnetic field. And this is because it corresponds to an easy axis associated with the cubic anisotropy. So it's across this axis. The transverse voltage measured at 45 degrees and 135 degrees are opposite in sign, since in both cases the in both cases, we start with the magnetization oriented along a different hard axis and in along different quadrants. So the sign is different. So that's all I want to say about this slide. By minimizing the free energy proposed in this equation, we found the equilibrium angles of the magnetization of VSUM for each value of the external magnetic field at H and for the different directions P sub H. We have considered the anisotropic constant Kc and Ku as fitting parameter for the normalized longitudinal and transverse voltages shown in the last figure. The presence of the uniaxial anisotropy plays an important role in fitting the experimental curves. Therefore, it plays an important role in the magnetization process. The angles of the magnetization corresponding to both a relative minimum, light blue dots or light blue crosses here, and an absolute minimum, green crosses or green arrows here, of the free energy are shown in both figures. The squared distances between the experimental points and the model can be easily computed from the graphs. And we employ the Powell method to adjust and minimize the residuals. We were able to adjust the anisotropic constant, and these are the results. So in this slide, I show a figure that presents the transverse signal as a function of the external field along consecutive angles of P sub H, where the current is applied along 110 direction, a hard axis. The path taken by the magnetization is strictly related to the quadrant in which H, the magnetic field, was applied when it was reversed. For example, in both paths, two discontinuous jumps occur, and the forward and return path follow different routes. One goes up, and for example, this goes up, and this goes down. And the discontinuous jump occur corresponding to abrupt changes in the magnetization direction that aligns near a different cubic easy axis. This, for example, aligns with this cubic easy axis. So the systems response proven to be very sensitive to the direction of the applied field due to its magnetization anisotropies. And we have to keep in mind that at low field values, the Stone-Warfare model is no longer valid. So I will skip the conclusions, and thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any?
Run out of time.
No, that's okay. I think we've got a little bit of time for questions. Let's see if there are any in the chat, or people can raise their hands. If not, so I was wondering a little bit. So you focus on this about there was the iron 85 cobalt 15 stoichiometric ratio. Do you think there'll be? Do you think is that like a very kind of a sweet spot in the ratio, or do you have any perspective on what other kind of compounds you can make here, and if you'd see similar effects?
Again, I didn't hear.
So, would you expect effects, say, if you had a higher concentration of cobalt, or?
The concentration is important because different concentrations give you different damping values. That is important for applications on this kind of memories, magnetic memories. That's the question, or if I expect something different.
Yeah, or if you expect, say, if you had a little bit less cobalt, a little bit more, it would be better for these applications, or worse, or is that still under investigation?
For different concentration, maybe there we will find a different crystallographic structure or a different magnetic anisotropies, and this will affect the results on the magnetization process curves I showed before. Maybe that's what I expect. But the how these curves moves depends on the magnetic anisotropies of the crystallography structure.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. So I think we have to move to the next speaker. If we could all thank our speaker again, please.